I've seen too many young journalists leave the industry just because of the pressure they're put under. So I wanted to give them an option of saying, hey, there's another way. Hello everyone, my name's Troy. I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for 15 years and I've been a writer, editor, online producer, online editor, basically anything in the newsroom, you name it, I've been it. But lately I've left the newsroom to start a career in freelancing. I find that the resources aren't there anymore and the quality has started to decrease, but the expectations and the output hasn't changed much. As a matter of fact, journalists are required to not only do a story, they're now required to do the video, do photos, do social media. And ultimately what this has done is put a lot of pressure on journalists, and so the quality of what's coming out now is really starting to fall away. So in the last 2 years I've decided to leave the newsrooms and start freelancing. The rising of freelancing, of contributor content has really started to take off, and the real quality writing now comes from freelancers. Now it's always been like that. That's been going on since we've had publications. But in the last few years, I think the model of having staff writers and employing a lot of writers to bring out publications is just not working. The revenue started to dry up, and now it's a case of just trying to survive rather than thrive. So when young journalists come to me and they're seeing all the resources get wiped out from around them, they're under a lot of pressure, they don't get a lot of money, they're working 10, 12-hour days, they come to me and say, is there a future in this industry? And I can understand their concern, but I tell them there is, because it might not be in newspapers or advertised revenue-driven business model, but what they do is of value. And so that's why I think with freelancing, that value is realized. And so a good, well-written story that's fact-checked and creditable and can get interest from wide variety of readers will be of value to the right organization. I think the days of a staff writer are long gone. I think a new journalist now should look at freelancing as an opportunity. If they're not, they're missing out on a huge market. Not only that, a lot of publications are only accepting freelancing and submissions now. Even the biggest publications are now getting stories on commission. The editors are choosing what they want than employing a journalist or a writer or a photographer or a videographer to deliver what they want. So without actually being on staff. I've got a couple of contracts like that. I've signed contracts with magazines, and so now they contact me if they're looking for something in Australia or something in my field of expertise. So it's a good place to be, and it's a good backup when there's a lot of journalists losing their jobs in newsrooms at the moment. So it's always worth looking into, and that's what I would suggest new journalists do. I was working in Vietnam with a group of other journalists, and some of them were just starting out, and they really didn't have directionless because they didn't know exactly how to get into the industry. So one journalist one day asked me, how do I pitch stories to become a freelancer? I've been doing it for a while by this stage. And it was surprisingly easy, and they were surprised. And then when they actually started doing it, they said, well, I've never been told to do it like this before. And if someone just told me to do it like that, then they would have been a freelancer for a long time. Now that person's gone on and is doing a lot of freelancing work in Vietnam. They're still in Vietnam. They've spent 10 years trying to be a journalist, and in the last 12 months, they've got a job in Vietnam, but they're also doing a lot of freelancing work as well. And a lot of the ideas they have are getting picked up because there's a real need and a thirst for good stories. So how I got into freelancing? I started out as a newspaper in Victoria, and at the time I was really into mountain biking. I'm still into mountain biking, but I was mountain biking quite a bit with a few clubs down there, and they had a few competitions, but they weren't getting good exposure. My newspaper wrote a couple of stories, but we couldn't write what I wanted to write So I approached a few mountain bike magazines to help them out, and got picked up. So I covered a few of the races and a few of the some features on some of the trails, and the pay was pretty good from these magazines, and they buy most of their content. So once I did get a few stories in there, they asked me to do a few other things. I ended up going to another location covering a 24-hour mountain bike race. So once you're in the foot in the door and you've proven your chops, you can usually get a little bit extra work out of it. And a few of these magazines, once you've found your niche, which we'll talk about in another episode, you can really make a career out of it. Journalism is in trouble, and it's for one reason mainly, and that's because of the business model of most newspapers and magazines. So the newspaper, most of the audience and the readers for a newspaper or magazine are the product. The real customer is the advertiser, because that's where the revenue comes from. So it doesn't matter if there's more readers than ever, if the advertising dollar starts disappearing, then there has to be resource cuts within the newsroom. And so what this does is that even with people wanting information, like there's never been a time when people have been so aware of what's going on in the world. One, because the platform choices they've got now, but two, they want good information. Like the fake news isn't just a cliche or a buzzword, it's actually a real thing. And so the idea of having good interviewing skills, good fact checking, good storytelling, good accountability, and good interviewing, it's all very important. So the stuff you learn in a newsroom is vital, and it will be vital for a long time. It's just there's not a lot of value put in it on itself unless it gets advertising dollars. Now, that will change when people start wanting to pay for content and value content. And I think that's starting to change now. There's a few media organizations, like, for example, The Guardian is now a user-based organization. So they're making their money from their readers. And so it moves back to a reader focus. So what I decided to do is start this channel because I've seen too many young journalists leave the industry just because of the pressure they put under. It's sad to see, because it takes a certain talent to do what we do, and it is valuable. And to see them walk away disillusioned I've seen that for a decade. It's been too long. So I wanted to give them an option of saying, hey, there's another way. Also, on top of that, I wanted to do this because, like I said about one of my journalist friends who said, I want to do this, I just don't know how to do it. Hopefully I'll give you some advice and some tips on how to get into the industry. And so this channel will provide tips. I'll go through my own journey, because being a freelancer every day is another day and step in the journey. And also I'll also highlight some of the stories I've written, how I got the story, how I pitched it, who I pitched it to, how much I got paid for it. These are big questions usually asked by a lot of people: how much you should get paid for it, how do you pitch, where do you get your stories from. Hopefully I'll be able to answer that for you with this channel. But for now, thanks very much for your time. Please click the like button and the subscribe button, because in the next couple of weeks I'll be bringing out some new content. So if you subscribe, you'll get alerts on that. And thank you very much. Talk to you soon.